2, 1, rolling.
Hello, I'm Patsy Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Martin County Historical Society, and we're privileged today to have three Rogerses to participate in our oral history project. And I'd like to welcome Jean, Vera, and Pete Rogers. Vera Rogers Harrison. And we're very interested in knowing about your family history. And we'll start with Vera. And I want you to tell us about your grade school experiences.
What, out here?
Out here.
Well, it went through, that's been so long ago.
10.
They had, through the 10th grade,
Right.
see, was this, and then, you see, they didn't, if you wanted to go any higher, you graduate from high school, well, you had to go somewhere else. So Mama's his sisters and all were so good about taking Helen went down to Whiteville, and stayed down there. And I went down at Myrtle's and graduated from Robinsonville High School. And I don't know now, the next year, I believe we three were the only three that had to leave. Then they made had the school here then.
Then you had 11th grades here.
Recently, AB graduated from out here.
Recent.
11th grade.
Oh. But then she went to work in Robinsonville at Grimes Drug Store as a bookkeeper. Do you remember that?
Who?
Teresa.
Yeah, I remember that because she stayed up there and she helped Uncle David there down the drugstore sometimes.
Yes.
Sure did. So Mama's sisters were just really very nice about taking everybody.
They're a very close family.
Yes, it was a close family.
What did you do after you finished high school?
Well, after I finished high school, well, I stayed out a year, you see. My daddy died, y'all remember. And then I went to Greensboro, Women's College, and that's where I went to school there.
What was your area of study?
Well, I only went for 1 year there, and
You took a business
business
course?
course. And just the usual. I didn't go that year, you see. And then Ruth Hazel, my cousin, that lives next door, then she graduated that year that I stayed home. And then she went with me, and we went to Greensboro Women's College, and we roomed together there. And so
In later years, you worked with taxes, didn't you?
yeah.
You worked with income
Oh yes,
taxes?
I worked with tax.
Did it vary?
I worked in Washington at the one of the businesses over there, and we each one got out, and did something when we finished our education.
Let's find out from Pete about your education and what happened afterwards.
Well, I went to grammar school to Beargrass and went to high school up through the 10th and about the 11th grade, and half of my last senior year I went to Oak Ridge Military Institute. And I finished up there at Oak Ridge, and of course I transferred my grade back down and I got a graduation certificate from Beargrass School.
Well, you did.
And then after that I went to service. I was drafted in 1943. And stayed in service from 1943 to 1956. 46, right, 1946. And came back and was in service. Went overseas to Iceland. Spent about 15 months in Iceland. Came back and went to East Carolina and graduated from East Carolina in business education. And then I went to work with Stanley Fertilizer Company in Williamston. I worked with them, and then it was Olin, it was Matheson, and then Olin. And I stayed there for 18 years, and they closed up, and I went to work with Coastal Chemical out of Greenville, and worked with them for about 22 years, and so after that I retired.
Coastal Chemical is still in business, aren't they? Particularly in Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still there.
You know that
J.C. White.
J.C. Whiters is living at Cypress Glen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like it.
Oh, he does. I know he sold his house and they moved it, they bought a place out there and moved in there. Yeah.
Where is Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge is out from Kernersville, just a little ways from Kernersville.
Tell me, Gene, a little bit about your educational background after Bear Grass.
After Bear Grass,
You went to Bear Grass.
went to Bear Grass, and then, that was during World War II, when I was in high school, and, had a hard time getting teachers and principals out here, and we went the whole year, one whole year, we didn't even have a principal. Somebody was filling in back and forth with a permanent principal, so the next year, my 11th grade, I went to Williamson High School. And, then from there, I took 12th grade at Oak Ridge Military Institute. After that, I went to Chapel Hill.
Were you in service?
Yeah, I went in the military. I went in the Coast Guard in 1951. I spent 3 years in the Coast Guard. When I came back, I finished my undergraduate degree at Chapel Hill.
And your graduate degree?
And then went then I think I taught 1 year and then went back to graduate school and finished.
Administration.
Yeah.
And then you became superintendent
Yeah,
of the Martin County Schools.
all right, later.
Were you part of that time, those early years spent in South Carolina?
Yeah, I spent 2 years in South Carolina. I went to South Carolina right after I graduated with my master's. And I was down there as a principal, building principal, taught a little bit, was building principal and principal down there. And then after 2 years, we came back to North Carolina. Spent the rest of my career in North Carolina.
It's a good place to be, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, you know, there's a lot to say about village life and the freedom you have to roam around and be in the community and be in the swamp and play with people in town. Tell me a little bit about those experiences, Pete.
What was that,
What was it like to live in a small village like Bear Grass?
Tell me your experiences, your early days when you were growing up in Bear Grass. Like roaming around the streets and into the swamps, having the freedom and the safety to do these things.
Oh, yeah, well, I think it's very great to go up in a little area like this. I think you have more freedom, and there's not a whole lot of restrictions. And I think this is the biggest thing, really.
But you were safe, and your mama knew you were safe.
Yeah, they knew where we were part of the time. Sometimes we'd get off somewhere and they didn't know where we were. I know one time I used to go with them to town once in a while to pick up freight down there, and the colored fellow got run over down there one time. And they didn't even know about it until it came out in the Enterprise. So it wasn't hurt or anything, but they took me to the doctor and everything. I came back and they picked up the Enterprise and they saw where I got where somebody ran over me.
Were you hurt?
No, not really.
Well, that was a blessing.
Yeah, I didn't even tell them about it when I got back. But you were free to roam around mostly.
And free to not tell them what you wanted to.
Yeah. They don't know where you were part of the time.
Vera, what were your experiences like in village life?
What?
Living here in a Bear Grass.
Well, it's just home, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Know all the neighbors and everything, and so it's, I recommend it.
So you had chores when you were living at home?
Uh,
You had chores, family?
Oh, yeah,
Sure,
well,
tell
you
me
mean,
about
when
it.
I was growing up,
Yeah.
yeah, all of us had jobs, but there's always, in the store out there, they always have extra help. Well, we would have to, my mother would have to feed them, and sometimes her bedroom, and even school teachers, you see, stayed there. And I remember Teresa walked in her sleep bad. And so one of the teachers was was staying at our house. Well, upstairs, it was in one of the rooms, and she walked in her sleep, and I caught her. And just as she had run, going the door, you know, and I caught her and got her back and got her back in bed. So, you know, with a big family, you know, but we did have help. Mama, when she'd have a lot of them, she had a cook, you know, and we all had jobs to do. And my job in the kitchen was to fix the desserts or make something, you know, of that type. Because there was clerks at the store and there was also school teachers that boarded and stayed at our house. So,
And you had your main meal in the middle of the day?
uh,
You had your main meal in the middle of the day?
the main meal, yes, we did, And then we had, you know, there was always a black one, you know, he set a building on fire. What was he doing, lighting? And don't you remember? Pete don't remember
Who was
that. I
that?
mean, Pete and
On
Gene
the
don't
ST
remember
Outerbridge,
that.
wasn't the ST Outerbridge?
That was
was it?
ST Outerbridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, he stayed back there, and in fact, the
Yeah.
building he stayed in burned down later. I don't
And
know.
he
I
set
don't know
the
if he
building
caught
on
fire,
fire.
he burned it down what, but,
Pete, what were your chores around home?
huh,
What were your chores?
stay out of the way. No, you used to, you know, have to feed up, you know, a lot. You had cows and chickens and had to get in wood and all that sort of stuff. And when I was that age, that time, then as you got older, you went over down and help them put in tobacco and work some on the farm over there.
You had to milk the cow?
Yes, sir. I was the only one in the family except me and my mother milked the cow.
And feed the chickens and
Yeah, they
pigs?
look at the eggs and all this sort of stuff.
Uh-huh.
The rest of the time, stay out of the way.
So they wouldn't call on you.
Pete, I think, didn't you go to the movies and y'all got left downtown one time? Some of you walked
That
home.
was
That was
me.
Leon.
Who did
That was
that?
me, I got
When-
left down. I
when
went
you-
around to Urban's house and knocked on the door and they let me in, and took me in for the night, so.
Leon didn't walk from town one night.
Yeah, I know it did.
Yeah.
How did they happen to walk from town?
So didn't have another ride.
Everybody didn't have.
They were down there on their way home.
We used to hang out at Griffin's and finally somebody from Beargrass would come by and then we'd get a ride.
I see.
Nobody came by the night I was down there, Leon either, I guess I didn't remember getting. So I walked around to Urban's and knocked on the door and they let me in and get it.
That was fun. You never had to work out those details because something would always happen. Get your ride home. I know that there was basketball, no doubt, being played in the school system. Did you play, Pete?
Yeah, I played basketball.
Tell me a little bit about your basketball career.
Well, for a long time there, they played outside. But I think we did have a gym the first year I played. And I played basketball, and we had a fairly good team, nothing extra. And I didn't want too good. So I went to Up Ridge. I played a little bit up there at Up Ridge, but that was all my basketball thing.
Did you play baseball?
Yeah, played some baseball. Played a little baseball in high school, and a little bit some of these leagues they had down
Do
He
you
was an umpire for one of the leagues here.
there. Yeah, I umpired
You
for
did?
Martin County
Several.
League for a while, while I was in school over there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have the fans to rile up and disagree with you?
No, they may disagree, but they didn't give us no problem at all.
Well, you were mayor for a number of years.
For about 33 years, 33 or 34 years.
What were the highlights of that tenure, that period?
Well, we got a few things done in the town. We got street lights, some streets paved, and a lot of things, a few things done in the town that we still have.
That's good, really good.
Did your fire department grew right
Yeah.
much?
Fire
while you-
department grew through the town here too, but they were in the town, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Y'all organized, was the fire department organized while you were mayor
Oh,
or
yeah.
something?
Yeah, and I was treasurer of the fire department when it started for years. I don't know how many years I served in there.
Well, do you remember, let's see, Sunshine Sue?
Huh?
Do you remember Sunshine Sue?
Sunshine Sue.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bill Monroe.
Oh, yeah. Bill Monroe, too, yeah.
Tell me about Bill Monroe.
I don't know, he used to come, him and his brother used to come out here and put on shows out of Raleigh. And then they split up and they went to Nashville. That's the, Bill Monroe went to Nashville and the other one had a program of his own too.
I saw Sunshine Sue out on the Bear
I
Grass
didn't-
stage, and she was a lady with a band, with a
I didn't know.
country band, yeah. The first time I ever heard, You Are My Sunshine, she sang it. Had a nice
I
band.
don't remember.
Vera, do you remember the wash house at your mama's? That wash house? It
Yeah.
had a shower
Mm-hmm.
with a barrel on the roof?
That, well,
Now tell me about how that all came about.
what,
Your husband's role in helping get that set up. Leroy was so innovative. He could solve
well, you
problems.
see, his daddy owned a blacksmith shop out here.
Uh-huh.
And then they, live, they live right next to, there, the house, that's where he lived. And of course, we all played together, when we were growing up, we played with baseball, the field, they fix a field there, we play baseball and, I don't know, but you'd have to go home, at night and, or at lunchtime. You didn't eat somebody else's house. You went home. Do you all remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember going,
Yeah.
now they might, but I know we
You
did. They said,
didn't
now,
eat anybody else's house, you always had to come
that's
home.
what I said. You said that you could go play, but when it comes mealtime, make yourself way home.
Pete, you remember the shower.
Oh, yeah. They used to just put a barrel on top and then they'd have to take a regular funnel and put a piece of tin over it and solder it, and then put holes in it and put a cut off on it. You cut it off and on and outside, and I tell you, that worked good in the summertime. They put the water in the barrel so the heat, the weather would warm it.
How did you get to be so hot and sticky in the summertime?
Working in the field
Yeah,
at
okay.
that time.
What kind of work did you do?
Oh, I used to plow some, put in tobacco.
Did you ever prime tobacco?
Oh, yeah, prime tobacco.
Pick the worms?
I didn't pick no worms, I suckered a whole lot.
Suckered them?
You were lucky, you had a big one.
Ooh, the worms are terrible. All right, well,
Used to pick them off of collars though.
You did,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember.
Gene, tell me a little bit about Rogers Supply. How it came about and what
Well-
purpose it served.
I don't know how it came about, it was, Roger
neat.
Brothers, I think, to start with, Uncle Nathan and my daddy, I think originated Roger
But they
Supply
did,
Company.
but Nathan, helped operate the
Farms
farms. And our daddy, it was at the store.
Yeah.
And now our daddy though would go to Baltimore about once a year, twice a year. Buy merchandise
Probably twice a
for
year.
the store because they had everything. You didn't go to Williamston. These people all the way on down, just for miles around, did all the trading out here, and a lot of them would come on horse and cart, or buggy. Most of them were carts, And they would buy all their merchandise and all at the store because they carried everything. And our daddy would go to Baltimore. I don't know if he went once a year or twice a year to buy merchandise for the store, and it would be shipped down at Williamston. And then they had their trucks, they had a truck, and they'd send a truck down there to pick up the merchandise and bring it out here. And they had everything in the store that most anybody in our area need, you see.
I don't remember his going that way because I was only 2 when he died. But what I hear from my folks was that he would catch the train in Williamson and go to Norfolk and then catch a boat overnight from Norfolk to Baltimore and then the reverse coming back.
So he'd buy
Ships up there.
supplies in
That's right,
Baltimore.
Yeah.
And
Clothing and everything that
Shoes.
shoes and
Mule collars.
that's right.
Plows.
Plow points and plow, yeah, that's right.
Didn't he get on the boat down here in Williamson to go to Norfolk and catch another one into
He
Baltimore
might
for a
have,
while?
Pete,
I mean,
yeah.
Early.
Probably
I
early
heard
on
he did.
he
I used what he
probably
used to
did.
do. And then he called a train, I think, a little later.
Yeah.
But That's,
Well, it had everything in there from molasses to Brogan shoes, you know. I think they even had kerosene that they used, folks would buy, they used trim
They had
oil,
everything.
put in their lamp.
They had a gas tank out in front of the store at one time,
Yeah,
didn't
so
they?
Had
gas.
one.
Had a gas tank out there.
At
Yeah,
one time
yeah, they did, Yes.
I remember specifically about, there were counters on each side, and then it had potbelly stove in the middle. And on the end of one counter, I remember was, the reason I remember this is because Mama got the spool cabinet from down there and made me a little, Jeannie and I, a little cabinet that we still have, put legs on and that kind of stuff. And I reckon it was Coates and Clark, I do remember it was Coates and Clark that they, and then they used the top for sort of a desk kind of a thing, because there was
What?
an ink well up there, and then little places to put the pens, or pencils, or whatever the case may be. So I distinctly remember that.
Well, I know that Saturday afternoon was a big time for people coming with their carts and buying supplies, right? Saturday afternoons. What other purpose did this time merchant serve?
Well, he carried all the tenants for one thing, and not only that, carried everybody else in the neighborhood. They could charge, and then at the end of the year, y'all correct me if I'm not right, I think then at the end of the year, when all the crops were in and they'd sold their tobacco and the peanuts and the cotton and whatever else, then they would settle up at the end of the year. There wasn't much cash that I recall in my early days, much cash.
Very few
floating
banks.
around, and very few banks, and not anybody loaning much any money and that kind of stuff, so,
And most of your memories were in the 30s.
yes, absolutely.
So banks were having a tough time about
They
that.
were, yeah, from 29 to about 30.
So the Rogers brothers financed people in this
More or
farming
less.
community,
Yeah.
like a bank would do.
They had the little cards that you give each, they charge them out a card. And every time they buy groceries, they clip the amount of money off of that card. And they kept the cards, and they kept a copy of it in store, and when you come in to settle up, they'd have a record of everything.
Everything was current.
Yeah. And he used to buy old Christmas stuff down here, for Christmas, when Christmas time
Tell them
comes.
about Christmas Eve. Tell them about, what happened down there at
Christmas Eve. Well, you see, there was several stores. There was about 3 that was in operation, and they would have at Christmas. They would have a group. There was people, played musical instruments, and they had and they'd all gather out there, and they'd stay in one store a while, and then they'd go to another store. And then that's the way they did Christmas Eve, they went, and then people, parents, would come. And the store had, I don't know, I would say as long as broad as this here is on out there, that they had everything in the store where people came in and bought it. And then they had, now this, one of the cabinets that I have came from a spool cotton cabinet. And I had it in there where I took that, and they had leads,
It did have a lift top.
Gene, looking at, see, it's in there, and that, I think it's the corner one in there. It was, spool cotton.
They used to sell clothes, suits of clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Straw
The
hats.
frame of mirror I've got over my fireplace in the living room was the mirror they had out there in that store.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
The frame of it was.
Yeah, you had a table your mother
Yeah.
had done for you. Tell
Out
us
of the
about that.
out of the counters, like I said, they have these long counters on each side of the store, and out of one of the counters, I think it was over in the shoe department, over in that, in the clothing department on that side. I guess at some point in time, they took those counters out, and she had the board saved and had them planed down. When Jean and I were first married, she gave us that table for our dining.
You said it was sort of thick,
It was
right?
thick, but it was planed down to, not as thick. They had to get all the coats of paint off to, to get it back to the original, yeah. Right.
Really sturdy.
Well, they had, what I remember about Christmas, of course, early on, there was more, it was more original than it was out there. They had all kind of candy to come in, and I really like the chocolate drops and the coconut bonbons and that kind of stuff.
Well, they have buckets, and they'd have, they had one whole counter that had almost nothing on it but the candy, and they had those buckets of candy all around. And we went to school, and we had to come home for lunch, and we'd go through the store, and we'd always pick a piece of candy up out of the bucket,
Just like Martin Supply.
Yeah.
That was customary because I
Yeah,
did the same
same
thing.
thing.
So,
Okay.
but let me tell you now, one other thing that I remember that I thought was just great. They had dried peaches in little barrels or something, and dried apples. Well, I like the peaches, and I'd get a handful of peaches because they were a little sweeter than the apples, where the apples were a little tart. So I like the peaches. When I come through, I'd get me a little peach half or two.
They are
Dried
good.
apple, yeah. And then the best thing was when Mom would get them and make us a peach jack out of it.
Absolutely. Did she bake them or fry them?
Fried 'em.
Fry them.
Yeah. Fried them in lard.
That's why it was so good.
Yeah, I reckon you would, yeah.
Well, I remember the seamstress now, something about the store. We always had a seamstress that came in at the beginning of the school year. And with all these children, these girls, now the boys, not as much, but with the girls and all. And my mother would get a seamstress. She had a seamstress that would come in and make our dresses and things, And they would go down to the store. She would take the seamstress. They would go down to the store, and you see, they just had all kinds of cloth, anything you wanted, buttons, and because our daddy bought that stuff, and because there was no other place, we didn't go to Williamston, or Washington then. People from just miles around came and shopped at the store there. And so my mother had, all the children, not the boys, but the girls, and she had a seamstress that came in at least twice a year. And they would go down to the store, and for each one of us, they would pick out the material, and she would make the dresses for us, so that was our school dresses, and we were small.
Wow. Where did you guys get your clothing? Did you wear blue jeans? Overalls?
Gallus overalls.
Yeah.
High bib overalls.
Yeah.
We got them obviously we got them from the store. And a Brogan shoes.
Brogan shoes, that's right.
And today's young people think their denims are just really got the market covered. They think it's wonderful. Y'all been wearing them for years.
They're old.
Why do you think they've been so popular?
How are they?
I guess they're comfortable. After you get a few washings in them, they're real comfortable.
They're sturdy.
Yeah, they're sturdy.
And they became, they emerged with a gold miners rush out in California, well, in the Great Rocky Mountains, because the miners would wear denim because they were hardy enough to take the wear and tear of that hard life. So they, of course, became useful in the farms as farm hands. And I guess that was the standard thing. Did you wear knickers?
Yeah, I wore knickers till I was probably, I don't know how old, I could know 13, 14 years old, I reckon.
Yeah, I wore short pants and then I wore knickers. I remember going to a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving. They always had it in Robertsonville at Grandpa Green's, and I had on knee socks and knickers. I began to think it was kind of cold for me wearing these things, but that's what you dressed in. All the other boys had the same thing on, and then finally I graduated to knickers.
Much warmer.
Much warmer.
They were corduroy, were they?
Well, some of them were corduroy, and then there were some with other ones.
Herringbone.
Yeah.
We used to work overalls, and when your knees wore out of them, you patched them. But now they wear them, when you don't patch them, they want the holes in them now.
They want to patch your holes in them or patch them before you ever start wearing them.
That's right.
Well, as I said, you didn't go to town and buy your dresses, and you see, there were 4 girls, our 4 girls, now the boys and that. But Mama had that seamstress that came in each time of year. They would go down to the store and pick out the material, and that store carried everything, had patterns, everything. They get the patterns for the girls, And I remember very well that they always said, well, you stand still now, you know. And you try them on, you know, so they could know what length you make. So they would go to the store with the seamstress, you know, and they would pick out all the material for our dresses and the buttons and well, they had everything, the buttons and they didn't have zippers then, but the thread, all kinds of thread.
You remember those flour sack dresses?
Well, I never wore, yeah.
Some of the girls had
Yeah.
dresses made from those pretty flour sacks.
Fertilizer bags, they used to be cotton
Yeah.
fertilizer bags.
Yeah, they were floral
Yeah.
most often. Well, Vera, do you have any memories of the Depression years?
Well, you see, it didn't really bother us like it did a lot of people, you see, because we were there where we could go to the store, you see, the store was open there, and you see, we just, but of course, they always had books, you know, that they kept a lot of, and they would order stuff, you know, and different things.
An order book? They kept an order book?
Like a catalog, is that what?
Catalogs,
Uh-huh.
I'd order books.
Well, what I guess there just wasn't a whole lot of cash around. There was plenty of stuff that we could.
So you became self-sufficient, sort of like plantation
Yeah.
life. And did you pick any cotton, Vera?
Not much cotton, no. I
Jean didn't either.
I tried sometime, but I never did make
My
much
God.
headway with
Well,
it.
they were there in front of the house there. Now, Grandpa Rogers always planted some cotton out there, or some peel peas or something. I don't know. But see, they had tenants, you know, that lived in all the houses, you know, that they had. And so Helen helped my daddy. He kept the books, you know, and so she helped him. And then when she went off, she really learned a lot from him. And so that way, I don't know, it's just a different life than what it is now.
That's what we're hoping to have people like yourself talk about. It just sort of warms the spirit for you to review those early years and tell us your life
Yeah, but I haven't
experiences.
forgotten them.
Well, Vera, you've told me recently about how you used to drive Papa to town for
Yeah,
various
well,
things.
he was
had to get done.
he was one of, I mean, the bank, he
He's on the
was,
bank board.
huh,
He's on the bank board.
yeah. And he couldn't see how to drive at night. He taught me to drive. And I took him to town, and he would go to his meeting, and I would go to the movies. And so, you know, that way, but he couldn't see how to drive at night. But for his meetings, you know, the board meetings and all, he would go down there, and then I would go to the movies while he was at the.
Was that the Guarantee Bank or the Bank of Williamston?
It was not the Guarantee.
Merchant and Farmers Bank or
Merchant
something
Bank,
like
I
that.
think.
Farmers and Merchant
Well,
Bank.
and then Guarantee, it was Guarantee later, I
Yeah,
wasn't.
I think it was.
I'm not sure. But during the Depression, I can remember a penny was good to get by, come by.
Yeah. It didn't close during the Depression, did it?
Huh?
That Farm and Merchants Bank did not close during the Depression, did it?
I think it was sold out to somebody or
Oh.
something, I'm not sure about it, but I think the Farmers Bank was one of the biggest banks down there,
Right.
really.
Actually, getting back to picking cotton, I want to tell you about picking cotton. They let me pick cotton for a whole week after school and then on Saturday morning. And they'd weigh the cotton at noontime on Saturday because everybody got Saturday afternoon off. And they paid you a penny a pound for it. I picked the whole week and they weighed my cotton and it weighed 7 pounds and I got paid 7 cents. For
Was that Grandpa?
whole week.
Grandpa.
No, that was Urban.
Irving, yeah.
That was poor making money, wasn't it?
Especially when you couldn't pick much cotton.
That's a hoot. That really
I used to
is.
apply it, but I could never pick it much, I couldn't get it much.
How about those, you had some peanuts that had this stuff overgrown. What were those things called? Those flower things?
Peanuts were stacked.
No,
all that rain brought in the
Yeah,
weeds.
one year I remember, our Pete was probably gone. I guess he probably was gone to the military. But we had to put in the backers, and it was coming in so fast we didn't have time to tend to the peanuts, keep them chopped and this kind of stuff. And ragweed just took them over, grew up almost as high as my head. And it was so big we couldn't pull them out because it would pull the peanuts up. So we had to cut them out. So Leroy, or Mr. Leroy's daddy, Mr.
Blacksmith.
Yeah.
Well,
They fashioned us a little hook, something like that, right there, but it was flat metal, and he filed it right down real sharp. We went out there and cut those things out with those handmade.
It was slow going, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
and it wasn't a sickle. It was about that long, I guess, but
It was a blade.
a blade, and it was hooked so you could get it hook it into that thing and cut that thing off. I thought it was a 6-acre field of peanuts that was grown up like that. And I think that was the only one I recall that was in such bad shape. But anyway, it took us, but I thought we never would. 2 or 3 of us would never would get over that field of peanuts, hooking that thing.
How large was that stem? As big as your thumb?
Oh yeah, it was bigger. No, it was bigger than your thumb.
Hardy.
That thing was probably 3/4 of an inch.
Mhm.
They got to be that big. I'd never seen that before or since, but we just had to let them go. We had other things to do. But then you had to get them out. And it just took us forever.
One of the things about Irvin, our oldest brother, he had graduated from state college and had gone off, had a job. Was it Massachusetts?
Boston.
They went
He was in
Boston.
Massachusetts.
Boston,
He
Massachusetts.
gave up his job and came home and took over the business, and he came and helped raise the children. They were all small. We were kind of small.
See, I never remember my father.
I know they don't remember.
Yeah, I was only
that.
2 years old. And, he died.
I remember a few things about him. I don't remember a lot about him.
Tell us a little bit about it. About your dad.
Only thing I knew about, he used to come to the house every night for supper. And a lot of times he put me to bed before he go back to the store. And I just remember a few things, that he did, but other than that, there's not a lot of it I remember really. But I was old. When he died, I was about 10 years old, wasn't
5 when he died. I was
I?
2.
He died in 32.
7, you were 7, so I was 2, and so you were 5 years older than I am, so you're about 7.
Well, he died in 32, and I was born in 24.
Well, then Irvin came home, as I said, and he came home and had to take over. Because my daddy and his brother, that's Uncle Nathan, were in business together. My daddy operated the store, and he looked after the farms and the farming,
That made a good partnership.
they were partnership.
My mother always would say that Pete favored Uncle Jacob. Do you agree?
I think so. More so.
More than any of the others.
I think so.
Have they ever told you that?
Yeah, I think
I've heard that too.
Yeah, we got a picture of him, and he's some favor there, yeah. I think
So when you had, while you were away during the war, there was a shortage of farm hands. And I guess Vera and Jean could probably recall how that vacancy was filled here in Martin County. We had a prison camp. Do you remember that?
Had what?
Prison of war camp. Prisoner
Williamson.
of war camp.
Had the German prison camp down there.
Oh, yeah, the
Down there where
German,
the
yeah.
fertilizer plant was.
And,
I remember that.
and you remember there was not enough help to
Yeah.
harvest the crops.
That's right, and they would, and help harvest it. But they had somebody, guard them, they have a guard that guarded them, to get that.
Yes.
I stacked peanuts with them.
Yeah.
They said they were good help. That's
Yeah,
what I.
well, the Italians, the first wave were Italians, and the second wave were Germans. And they came out. They helped with tobacco a little bit, but they helped mostly with peanuts and gathering corn and stuff like that. They didn't know how to crop tobacco. through the leaves. They couldn't distinguish which ones were right, which one, so they didn't know anything about it. But they were good. It filled, like you said, they filled in a real void that we had in the labor market.
So, I remember seeing that prison camp and those men behind the fence. I was very frightened because I thought they were the enemy.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, they were very human, just like we are.
Mhm.
I couldn't communicate with them because I didn't know the language, but they, talked and shouted and carried on, but they worked. They did not,
They didn't slow.
No, absolutely not.
Well, there was and finally there was scientific agriculture that came to our area. I think, was Urban trained in agriculture at State? No.
I don't know who
I think he was in business,
else. He was
wasn't he?
business
I think he's
administration.
business.
Business, I think he went to business.
And so,
He graduated, I was telling you, he graduated and then he went to, Massachusetts. But when our daddy died, he gave up that job and came home
Right.
and took over, here, and, the business,
mhm.
and then,
He was not an agriculture, industry of agriculture,
So
that I recall.
I think Gene said he got 50 cents a week allowance.
Yeah, I got 50 cents a week for allowance.
And you worked the whole week.
In 1 week, it seemed like we worked from Monday morning at 6 o'clock, Saturday at 1 o'clock. We usually got off at 12, and this particular Saturday, we worked right on through to 1 o'clock trying to get something done, getting all the biker in, that kind of stuff. And he paid the hands off. I can't remember. There were tenants who got, got their stuff at the end of the year. Then there were some others that were paid at the same time, and I usually got my 50 cents. This week I thought, surely I'm gonna get more than 50 cents because I put in such a long week, past dinner time on Saturday. And I was heading to Williamston to go to the movies. Well, when time came around for me to get mine, I got 50 cents.
I think it was Peter, some of them that got left down that town and they walked home from Williamston.
No, that was Leon.
It was Leon.
Leon.
Leon. Well, yeah, they went to the movies and there was nobody that would bring them home, so they walked home.
And it was interesting about supplying the water for planting tobacco. Got that from the creek. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the tobacco was the only thing you watered because you wanted it to, get off to a good start. And what I remember about it is that we had to haul, the wells didn't produce enough water to put barrel after barrel after barrel in planting tobacco, setting out tobacco, so we had to go to the creek and dipped it up with a bucket and poured it in a 50-gallon drum, hauled it back, 2 or 3 drums on the truck, and hauled it back to the field and poured it in the transplanters. That's the way I remember us getting the water. to set out the
Is there anything to the story that I've heard about the underground water supply being drained off by Texas Gulf sulfur? That it leaves the water table here lower than it normally would be. Have you ever heard that
Yeah, I've heard
argument?
Yeah, I've heard it, yeah.
So you never had a whole lot of extra water, did you?
Castle Haynes aquifer is one of those that runs through Williamson. We have 2.
It is?
Yeah, and Castle Haynes aquifer goes all right on down through that plant down there. However it gets across the river, I don't know, but anyway, it's they draw their water from that, and that's I guess a theory or somebody's notion that it is called that.
Well, and more, if the water table, natural table gets low, then that space is filled up with salt water.
Very possible.
That's
Yeah.
what they say anyway. In the newspaper, I read about that. So I want to say how much I've enjoyed our visit together with you today, and hope that we can do this again sometime.
No,
Thank you, Gene and Vera
Yeah,
and Pete.
appreciate it a whole
It's been
lot.
a pleasure.
Okay.
3, 2,
I
Two.
played good.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, I'm Patsy Miller, a volunteer with the Martin County Historical Society. I'm happy to be a part of the Oral History Project, and today we're doing oral history with the Rogers family. Vera Rogers Harrison, Pete Rogers, and Jean Rogers. It's January the 13th, 2008.
And rolling.
Hello, I'm Patsy Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Martin County Historical Society and particularly interested in the oral history project we now have underway. Today we're privileged to do the shoot of the Rogers family. Today we have with us Vera Rogers Harrison, Pete Rogers, and Jean Rogers. This is January the 13th, 2008.